These actions send the message that rights are conditional, that identity determines access, and that even humanitarian work and religious duty can be obstructed. In 2025 alone, 137 ethnically motivated incidents were recorded. Since then, arrests, intimidation, and attacks have continued, with reports of physical assaults, property damage, and verbal harassment persisting into 2026. We recall the shooting of Serbian boys in Štrpce on Orthodox Christmas, a deeply disturbing act that still resonates precisely because accountability remains unclear and insufficiently demonstrated. Such incidents erode of belonging for entire communities. At the same time, a series of coordinated measures have affected the daily lives of Serbs. The unilateral ban on the Serbian dinar still persists, disrupting economic life and forcing pensioners, families, and small businesses into uncertainty as they struggle to access funds or conduct everyday transactions. Many elderly citizens still face long journeys to the administrative line simply to receive their pensions, turning what should be a routine matter into a source of hardship and humiliation. Systemic pressure on Serbian institutions in healthcare, education, and social services, leaving patients without reliable care and students uncertain about the continuity of their schooling in their mother tongue. Arrests that raise serious concerns regarding due process and proportionality. The seizure of land in the north of Kosovo for mono-ethnic special police bases, often conducted without transparency and outside agreed frameworks. These are not isolated decisions. They form a consistent pattern of pressure. To understand the full impact of these measures, one must look at how they affect everyday life. Economic restrictions translate into uncertainty for families and barriers for businesses. Parents worry about providing for their children. Teachers and doctors see their professional futures undermined. Institutional pressure affects access to healthcare, education, and social protection. Legal uncertainty creates fear and discourages return of those who were displaced. For many, this is not about politics. It is about whether they can live normally, raise their children, and remain in their homes. When basic conditions for a dignified life are eroded, people leave not out of choice, but out of necessity. This gradual demographic shift, driven by sustained pressure rather than voluntary migration, risks fundamentally altering the multi-ethnic character of Kosovo and Metohija. And this does not affect only Serbs. The Gorani community is facing increasing marginalization. The Bosniak community is being sidelined, with growing concerns about quiet assimilation. When multiple communities experience similar pressures, this becomes a structural issue that threatens the very fabric of coexistence. Once again, this is a question of principle. Over the past 6 months, the situation has deteriorated further. Instead of progress towards normalization, we are witnessing developments that deepen distrust and intensify insecurity. This raises a fundamental question. What kind of future can we expect in a society when people are targeted because of who they are and where justice is not present? Without accountability, there can be no trust. Without trust, there can be no stability. And without stability, we cannot achieve a lasting peace and stability. In this particularly concerning environment, the report makes no reference to the quiet but persistent exodus of Serbs. Within a very short period of time, according to sources, approximately 20% of Serbian population has left Kosovo and Metohija under pressure. This is not a statistic, it is an exodus, and it is our shared responsibility to stop it. Second stage is legal marginalization. The pressure we see today goes beyond physical threats. It is reinforced through policies and administrative decisions. Legislative initiatives, such as the draft law on foreigners, have caused deep concerns among Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija. There was a real risk that people who have lived and worked there for decades could be treated as foreigners, losing their rights to residence, work, and even to remain in their homes. Such measures are not only legally questionable, they reflect a broader pattern of attempting to reshape realities through administrative means. At the same time, Serbs are facing increasing legal and administrative obstacles that make everyday life more difficult, from access to public services to the exercise of fundamental rights. Previously reached agreements are not being respected. More than 13 years have passed since the signing of the first basic Brussels agreement, and it remains unimplemented. The key obligation undertaken by Pristina has not even come close to being fulfilled. The establishment of the community of Serb-majority municipalities has been delayed for nearly a decade and a half. This is not merely a matter of timing. It is a matter of credibility, trust, and respect for commitments that have been formally undertaken. Without the implementation of what has already been agreed, it is difficult to speak about genuine progress or sustainable normalization. In this way, Kosovo Serbs are left without legal framework that was guaranteed to them through the dialogue, undermining both trust and credibility of the process. There is also a deeper contradiction that must be addressed directly. Mr. Albin Kurti rose politically as a student activist, advocating rights and resisting what he described as oppression. Yet today, many on the ground experience his policies as restrictive, exclusionary, and increasingly heavy-handed. This transformation raises serious questions about consistency in application of democratic values. Leadership carries responsibility towards all communities, not only political supporters. When that responsibility is exercised selectively, institutions weaken and divisions deepen. We are also witnessing a recurring pattern. A crisis is created, we all invest time, energy, and diplomatic effort to contain it, and then when it is only partially reversed, we are expected to welcome that as progress. This is not genuine de-escalation. This is a cycle that consumes resources and erodes trust. This pattern has real consequences. Serbia remains fully committed to the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. But I must say that as recent as yesterday, we saw another example when Mr. Albin Kurti visited the north of Kosovo, once again bypassing and ignoring democratically elected Serb representatives and mayors. This is not engagement, this is exclusion. And if we speak honestly about the EU-facilitated dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, as I said, we remain fully committed, but without implementation of the existing obligations, it is not dialogue, it is stagnation. More than 13 years after the Brussels Agreement, we expect the community of Serb majority municipalities to be formed immediately. Without this community, the promised autonomy for the Serbs remains an unfulfilled promise, leaving Serbs without the institutional protections necessary for long-term security and prosperity. We must also recall the Washington Agreement from 2020, brokered under President Donald Trump. That approach was visionary. It placed economic cooperation at the center, offering a pragmatic path forward instead of confrontation. It offered connection instead of deadlock. It offered progress. That spirit should not be lost. Reviving elements of economic integration, freedom of movement, and practical cooperation could unlock tangible benefits for all communities. Third stage are attacks on culture, religion, and heritage. In addition to difficult security and living conditions, the Republic of Serbia must express particular concern regarding the continued targeting of Serbian cultural and religious heritage. The desecration of religious sites, Christian cemeteries, is not merely vandalism. It is a direct attack on identity, dignity, and fundamental human rights. Allow me to draw your attention to just one of many incidents, stoning of a bus transporting Christian Serbian pilgrims in southern Kosovska Mitrovica in September of 2025. This was not a random act. It was a targeted attack on individuals exercising their fundamental rights to freedom of religion. When such incidents are not adequately reflected, we risk losing a full and accurate understanding of the situation on the ground. Protecting these rights is essentially for reconciliation and confidence building. We are witnessing an accelerated process of militarization in Kosovo and Metohija. The strengthening of the so-called Kosovo security forces, accompanied by the acquisition of modern weapons, cannot be viewed as a neutral process, especially in this context of stagnating dialogue. It alters the security balance, increases uncertainty, and raises the risk of escalation. Such developments, especially when conducted without transparency and without full respect for international obligations, undermine efforts to maintain stability and call into question the credibility of existing security mechanisms. Let me therefore be clear. KFOR must remain the sole legitimate and credible security presence on the ground, fully in line with its mandate. At a time of growing global uncertainty and transformation of the international order, the frail stability in Kosovo and Metohija must not be put at risk. Combined with non-transparent cooperation with certain actors in the region, these developments raise serious concerns. Ladies and gentlemen, all these stages clearly illustrate the pattern of actions pursued by Pristina government. We are witnessing a deliberate approach in which crises are not accidental but created. Red lines are continuously pushed further by fueling tensions and igniting situations on the ground. And then those same crises are only partially de-escalated, just enough to present an appearance of restraint. But let us be clear, the red lines are never returned to their original positions. They are merely pulled back a few steps while new reality remains altered. How do we break this cycle? Firstly, by reaffirming the central role of the UN. For the Republic of Serbia, the UN remains the most relevant forum for ensuring justice and international order, side by supporting the EU-facilitated dialogue. Second, we must learn to look to the future. We must move beyond outdated divisions and focus on opportunities for cooperation. Serbs and Albanians are not destined to remain in conflict. They are people, both peoples, who must find ways to work together. There is space, particularly in economic cooperation, to build trust and create a shared future. A future in which our region moves closer to the European Union, becomes part of a common market, and offers our people stability, opportunity, and dignity. Distinguished members of the Security Council, let me be very clear. Instead of insults and accusations, we extend a hand of cooperation to the Albanian people. We do not believe that our peoples are destined for conflict. We believe that through dialogue, economic cooperation, and mutual respect, a different future is possible. And once again, Serbia is not part of the problem. We are part of the solution. Serbia remains committed to peace. We remain committed to international law and to the full implementation of all agreements reached. The Republic of Serbia supports and will support UNMIC in its role in ensuring accountability and objective reporting, but sustainable normalization must be built through implementation, dialogue, and trusts. Serbia stands ready to work constructively with all partners towards a comprehensive, mutually acceptable, and lasting solution that respects the rights and security of all communities. And finally, let us be clear. Without responsibility, there can be no justice. Without justice, there can be no trust. And without trust, there can be no lasting peace. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Dorish for his statement. I now give the floor to Mr. Glauk Konjufca. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I took note of the report of SRSG, which provides a detailed summary of political developments in Kosovo, despite some controversial and biased elements that do not accurately reflect events on the ground. I will keep my remarks brief, as I understand that this Council has other, more urgent matters and crises to address. The Republic of Kosovo continues to thrive as a stable democracy with functioning institutions, consistent economic growth, professional police and security forces, and conforms to the highest standards of human rights and community rights, which are guaranteed by the Constitution, while demonstrating resilience against external challenges and ever-expanding global crises. Since our last debate, we held fair and democratic elections at both the local and national levels, once again showing that Kosovo has built democratic and independent institutions capable of maintaining stability and upholding liberal standards. The newly formed government will continue its ambitious reform program to make Kosovo more prosperous, secure, foreign interference and preserved the integrity of our democratic institutions. Mr. President, we are a peace-loving nation and have never interfered in other states' internal affairs. Despite Serbia's aggression and continuous hybrid threats against our institutions and society, Kosovo remains ready to normalize interstate and neighborly relations. However, the obstacle to peace and normalization of relations remains Serbia, which is neither interested in normalizing relations with Kosovo nor joining the EU. They are trying to deny our region the much-needed stability, prosperity, and full integration into the Euro-Atlantic structures. We call on Serbia to come to terms with reality and recognize Kosovo as a sovereign and independent state, and end holding its society and entire region hostage to aspirations of regaining regional hegemonism. While UNMIK's report accurately recognizes Kosovo's efforts to normalize relations with Serbia, it overlooks, however, the stabilizing effect of our constructive minority integration efforts in the north part of Kosovo. The effective functioning of a society relies on social cohesion and integration within a shared legal and political framework. This is a framework that many of you here in UN Security Council operate within when it comes to minority protection. Our efforts in north part of Kosovo to provide security and address threats are aimed at ensuring a safe and stable environment for all citizens of Kosovo, regardless of their ethnic background, so that our citizens can live in peace and free from pressure by Serbian illegal structures. It is in this spirit that we have undertaken measures to integrate and harmonize municipal health, education, and other public services in Serb-populated areas with those of the government of Kosovo. Mr. President, Kosovo has one of the most advanced minority protection frameworks in Europe. Our concerns remain, however, that Serbia and other malign actors continue to weaponize minority rights and exploit the multi-ethnic character of Kosovo to promote division, disorder, and undermine our democratic institutions and peaceful coexistence. The report only briefly mentions the discovery of illegal weapons in this part of Kosovo, but does not adequately assess the constructive efforts and proportionate measures taken by the Kosovo police and our governmental institutions to preserve peace and normality in this part of the country. Similarly, the UNMIK report highlights several isolated and local incidents which are currently being investigated by Kosovo's professional police, but fails to mention Belgrade's hybrid threats to obstruct peace and hinder integration of the Serb community. In particular, the report insufficiently covers the case of the armed and terrorist attacks in Banjska in September 2023, which remains a great concern for us. The Republic of Kosovo, like the EU and NATO, has continuously called for the establishment of accountability over the past 3 years. Belgrade has ordered, trained, and now protects the main perpetrators of this terrorism and aggression, including Milan Radojcic, who at the time of the attacks was vice president of the Belgrade-backed Serbian list in Kosovo. We cannot trust Serbia, and we cannot expect to normalize relations without clear accountability and assurances of non-aggression. Equally, had the UNMIK report been more balanced and accurate, it would have reported on developments in the region, particularly Serbian authoritarian and destructive approach, which is evident through increased armament, military escalation rhetoric, disinformation campaign, and the administrative ethnic cleansing of Albanians in these 3 municipalities, in Preševa, in Bujanovc, and in Medveđa. Mr. President, despite these challenges, Kosovo was recognized last year, so in 2025, by other 4 United Nations members. And these are Kenya, Sudan, Syria, and Bahamas. And we look forward to establishing and strengthening diplomatic and political relations. We are grateful to all 121 United Nations member states that have formally recognized independence and statehood of the Republic of Kosovo. I call on the remaining UN member states without further delay to recognize Kosovo as an independent and sovereign state and open pathways for new friendships and cooperation for mutual benefit. The key to peace and stability in the Balkans remains recognition of Kosovo by all EU and NATO member states. Dear Presidents, regarding the rule of law and human rights, the UNMIK report, I think, does not sufficiently cover the Kosovo's government efforts to combat corruption and only briefly mentions our efforts to promote transitional justice and deliver justice to victims through war crimes trials. However, the inclusion of an extensive annex on the Kosovo Specialist Chambers and the Specialist Prosecutor's Office constitutes a mischaracterization of their legal nature and an overextension of UNMIK's reporting authority. The Specialist Chambers are not a creation of Resolution 1244. They were not established by the Council, do not derive authority from it, and do not fall within UNMIK's mandate. The specialist chambers were established through a constitutional amendment adopted by the Parliament of Kosovo. Their legal foundation derives from a bilateral exchange of letters between Kosovo and the European Union. They are a product of Kosovo's sovereign legal order, created through democratic legislative processes and supported through partnership with the European Union. The specialist chambers should report to the Parliament of Kosovo. Likewise, the presence of EULEX is based on agreements with Kosovo institutions and must be understood within that framework. Ongoing efforts to present Kosovo institutions within a status neutral or UN-derived framework are unacceptable. Mr. President, let me conclude by sharing our long-standing view, shared also by many Council members here, that UNMIK's mandate is completed and that United Nations resources and staff would be better used elsewhere to address other pressing crises and conflicts. Kosovo is now an independent, sovereign and democratic state that has achieved normalcy and functionality, a sufficient benchmark for UNMIK to exist. As demonstrated by our recent involvement with the Board of Peace, which was established by President Trump and other partners, Kosovo is ready to contribute to peace and stability also in other parts of the world, such as the International Stabilization Force for Gaza, which was mandated by this Council Resolution 2803 last November. The focus should not be on having the United Nations in Kosovo through UNMIK, but on admitting Kosovo into the United Nations. We believe that UNMIK should be transformed into an office that would facilitate Kosovo's full membership in the UN and its agencies, programs, and treaty bodies. This would be a more sustainable way to use United Nations sources rather than attempting to establish a role where none exists. I thank you all.
I thank Mr. Konjufca for his statement. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statement. I give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Mr. President, I thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, Mr. Peter Chu, for his briefing. At the same time, we extend our greetings to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora of Kosovo, Mr. Glauk Konjufca, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, Mr. Marko Gjuriqit, and Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, who also joins us today. Colombia welcomes the progress made in the formation of a new government in Kosovo following the recent elections, and we express our trust that, in light of the political developments in 2025, institutions will continue to be strengthened and to contribute to democratic stability in the country. In addition, Colombia welcomes the recent announcements on the civil registration and the implementation on the law of foreigners in Kosovo as an important step towards fulfilling the agreements reached under the framework of the European Union facilitated dialogue for mutual understanding. We recognize the efforts being undertaken by various stakeholders to ease tensions, strengthen trust, and promote the recognition and inclusion of all communities in Kosovo. Mr. President, UNMIK's ongoing work remains relevant in supporting these efforts, in coordination with other actors such as the European Union. The political dialogue must be supported by a sustained commitment on both sides, based on good faith and respect for the commitments made, in order to move towards stable and lasting solutions benefiting all communities residing in the region. In this context, we encourage continued creation of greater spaces for dialogue between the communities and civil society as tools to build trust and mutual understanding in coordination with relevant institutions, reflecting Kosovo's ethnic diversity as an essential asset for social cohesion and peaceful coexistence. We deem as positive the recent announcements on the search for missing persons. In particular, we stress the value of truth-seeking and preserving memory for crimes related to forced disappearances as a step towards reconciliation. This is a duty owed to the victims and also as a foundation to forge more inclusive societies aimed ultimately at building lasting peace. Mr. President, Colombia further welcomes the progress made in the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, and we commend the efforts to promote women's full, equal, meaningful and safe participation in peace-building and social cohesion processes. Additionally, my country recognizes progress made in the Youth, Peace and Security Agenda, in particular the work to guarantee the active inclusion of young people in these processes. Here, we would encourage the authorities to continue incorporating broader and more meaningful participation from women and young people in the process, in line with the observations made by the Secretary-General in his most recent report. We hope that both agendas will continue to be strengthened through greater inclusion across the entire territory and through the continued safeguarding of rights and freedoms for the entire population. To conclude, Colombia underscores the need to build on the tangible progress made on the ground through fulfilling the commitments made in 2023 and by strengthening the institutions and the rule of law. This will be vital to ensure the right conditions to ease tensions, build trust between communities, and lay strong foundations for a lasting stability in the region. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Colombia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, and thanks to also Special Representative Peter Dewey for his briefing today. The United States remains committed to supporting stability in Kosovo and Serbia. We, like each of you, know that this peace and stability matters for both countries and for the future of a more prosperous Western Balkans. We know and appreciate the fact that the people of Kosovo and the people of Serbia are our friends. They deserve a future defined by security, economic opportunity, and neighborly relations, not by political tension or recycled grievances. So our message to Minister Gjuriqit and Minister Konjufca is simple. The only durable path forward is normalization. President Trump and the American people are listening carefully today for you to clearly commit to working and prospering together. We hope Prime Minister Kurti and President Vučić that both sides will lower the temperature, avoid escalation, and stay engaged at the table. The United States is committed to partnering closely with leaders that look to the future instead of to the past, with a genuine dialogue instead of theater. Colleagues, the American people also are watching to see what this body does with UNMIC. This council has a fundamental responsibility to those who fund it and those it deploys, to ensure that missions are actively engaged in essential operations and that they remain faithful to the purposes for which they were created. On that test, UNMIC no longer measures up. UNMIC was created in 1999 under Security Council Resolution 1244 in the aftermath of conflict and displacement in Kosovo to provide an interim international civil presence and help stabilize a dangerous post-war environment. That was a different moment, a different mission, and a different Kosovo. That is not the reality on the ground today. There is no justification for treating Kosovo in 2026 as though it were still the Kosovo of 1999. Today, KFOR helps maintain security in the region. ULEX and the OSCE work to uphold rule of law and strengthen Kosovo's institutions. The EU Special Representative, Mr. Peter Sorensen, leads on the Pristina and Belgrade dialogue. UNMIC no longer plays a meaningful governance, military, or mediation role. It is not addressing an active peacekeeping crisis. It is not a security guarantor on the ground, and it is not advancing normalization. Many of the functions it still retains on paper are better handled by other organizations. Yet this mission remains. Why? In a world of real crises needing our attention, from Ukraine to Iran, Haiti, and Sudan, the American people, and frankly all those who fund this mission, are right to ask a simple question: what exactly are we still paying for? UNMIC today has a civilian footprint of roughly 300 personnel and only 8 total military officers. In a phrase, it's an overstaffed, overfunded peacekeeping mission without peacekeepers. We welcome the Secretary General's proposed reductions to UNMIC's budget for the upcoming peacekeeping financial year. They are a step in the right direction, but they don't go far enough. That's just an 8.6% reduction, which totals about $4 million in savings. Modest trims are not the same as real reform. Until this council reaches agreement to close UNMIC, the mission should be streamlined further, its staffing reduced further, and its residual functions formally transferred to institutions and entities which are not only better suited to carry them out, but which are already doing so. When a mission has fulfilled its purpose, its mandate should end. What a concept. In fact, one of the clearest signs of dysfunction in the UN system is that we are too often unable to act when the moment calls for it, when success calls for it. A mission that never ends is not a success story, it is a warning sign. The Security Council should not measure effectiveness by how long a mission survives. It should measure effectiveness by whether peace has become durable, institutions capable, and that the mission is no longer needed. In Kosovo, the answer is clear. The conditions on the ground, the capabilities of local institutions, and the stable presence of other actors, especially those from the EU, all point in the same direction. UNMIC has reached the end of the road. And if this council is serious about credibility, discipline, and reform, then we should act like it. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Monsieur le Président.
Madam President, the Democratic Republic of the Congo welcomes the holding of this meeting dedicated to the situation in Kosovo. We welcome the presence here with us of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, His Excellency Mr. Marko Gjuriqit, and we thank Mr. Peter Dewey, Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo for his briefing. We also welcome the presence of the representative of the European Union. The Democratic Republic of the Congo would like to commend the ongoing efforts of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, whose work remains an important factor in facilitating dialogue, strengthening trust between the parties, and contributing to a more stable environment. My delegation reaffirms its attachment to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, in particular respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, which remains the foundation of the international order as enshrined and defined in the context of Kosovo by Security Council Resolution 1244. This resolution constitutes the legal framework of reference for the Council's consideration of this issue and the basis of the United Nations engagement in pursuit of a lasting settlement grounded in dialogue and respect for international law. Mr. President, recent developments described in the Secretary General's report reflect a mixed reality. While the security situation remains generally calm, it nevertheless continues to be fragile in a context marked by persistent political uncertainty and localized tensions. This situation underscores the need to strengthen the predictability as well as the stability of the political framework, whose consolidation constitutes an essential prerequisite for any lasting progress. It therefore calls for a measured approach based on a rigorous assessment of conditions on the ground and precludes any premature conclusions regarding the durable consolidation of stability. For these reasons, the Democratic Republic of the Congo considers that UNMIC retains its full relevance, notably in the exercise of its facilitation and mediation role, but also in the protection of community rights, given the fragility of the security and social fabric. However, peacekeeping operations cannot be artificially reduced or withdrawn so long as the root causes of instability have not been fully eradicated. Indeed, any hasty or insufficiently prepared reconfiguration would carry the risk of introducing new vulnerabilities into an environment that remains sensitive. Mr. President, the Democratic Republic of the Congo supports efforts to normalize relations between Serbia and Kosovo. In this regard, my country welcomes the progress achieved within the framework of the European Union facilitated dialogue between the two capitals. While progress has been recorded, these gains must be consolidated in order to ensure durable de-escalation, restore trust, and accelerate the normalization of relations between parties. Peace cannot be considered durably secured unless it is fully and equitably experienced by all parts of the population. The protection of communities must remain at the heart of any sustainable approach to stabilization. In this respect, the Democratic Republic of the Congo considers that any measures affecting communities on the ground, particularly in areas with a Serb majority, should be undertaken with prudence in a spirit of conclusion, consultation, and preservation of essential services. It is important that the legitimate concerns of the populations affected be heard and addressed responsibly. In this regard, progress made in the management of humanitarian issues, particularly those related to missing persons, should be encouraged insofar as they contribute to rebuilding trust and supporting reconciliation efforts. Mr. President, to conclude, the Democratic Republic of the Congo reaffirms the need to prioritize an approach based on respect for established frameworks, on an objective assessment of realities on the ground, and on the pursuit of sincere dialogue between the parties. Only under these conditions can the elements for durable stability be brought together for the benefit of all the communities concerned, particularly the Serb communities in Kosovo. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
President, I welcome the presence of Serbian Foreign Minister, His Excellency Gjuriqit, at today's meeting. I thank Special Representative Dua for his briefing. The Kosovo issue bears on peace and stability in the Balkans and across Europe as a whole. It is in the common interest of all parties for the ethnic communities in Kosovo to coexist in harmony and for a political solution to the Kosovo issue to be reached at an early date. In light of recent developments and the briefing we just heard, I'd like to share 3 points. First, dialogue and consultation are the right path for resolving the Kosovo issue. Earlier this year, the EU convened a meeting between Serbia and Kosovo on missing persons, at which a consensus was reached. Recently, the EU has also undertaken extensive mediation between Serbia and Kosovo. China commends the efforts by the EU and encourages the two sides to maintain pragmatic and constructive engagement and strive to eliminate divisions and bridge differences. The 2013 Brussels Agreement clearly provides for the establishment of the Association of Sub-Majority Municipalities. The Kosovo authorities should implement the relevant commitments at an early date. Second, the harmonious coexistence of all ethnic communities is a fundamental prerequisite for stability in Kosovo. China notes that the Kosovo authorities have recently promulgated the law on foreigners and the law on vehicles and have begun to integrate Serb education and healthcare institutions into the Kosovo system. China also notes that the EU has agreed with the Kosovo authorities on a series of measures to facilitate the implementation of the law on foreigners. The Kosovo authorities should fully consider the rights, interests, and concerns of the Serb community, enhance dialogue and consultation with them, improve their situation, and promote national unity and mutual trust. Remove obstacles to the relevant dialogue so as to create conditions for social stability. Third, the presence of the UN is a strong guarantee for resolving the Kosovo issue. For a long time, the UN Interim Administration Mission Kosovo, UNMIK, has played an important role in maintaining stability in Kosovo and promoting national reconciliation, among others. The UN and this Council should maintain their attention on the Kosovo issue and provide UNMIK with adequate political and budgetary support. The Kosovo authorities should effectively guarantee the safety and security of UNMIK personnel and premises and facilitate the smooth delivery of its mandate. President, China's position on the Kosovo issue is consistent and clear. We support the parties concerned to work within the framework of Council Resolution 1244 to reach a mutually acceptable solution through genuine dialogue. In this process, the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Serbia should be fully respected. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Mr. President, I thank Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of UNMIK, Mr. Due, for his informative briefing. I also welcome the presence of the ministers from Serbia and Kosovo in the Council, as well as the participation of the head of the delegation of the European Union at today's meeting. I take this opportunity to extend our congratulations to the Special Representative on his appointment and express our confidence in his continued success and leadership as he takes on his new role. UNMIK continues to contribute to peace-building and reconciliation efforts in close coordination with KFOR and the EU legs, while supporting stability and fostering dialogue among the communities in Kosovo. I shall make the following points. Greece welcomes the progress achieved by Serbia and Kosovo within the EU-facilitated dialogue with the conclusion of the negotiations for the 2023 Declaration on Missing Persons implementation and the agreement reached toward the operationalization of the Joint Commission. We commend both parties for their commitment to advancing progress on an issue of utmost humanitarian importance with significant implications for lasting reconciliation and trust between the communities. There is no other sustainable path for Serbia and Kosovo than the normalization of their bilateral relations within the established framework of the European Union facilitated dialogue. Greece remains fully engaged in supporting the efforts of the EU Special Representative for the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, Mr. Sorensen. Both parties must enhance their efforts towards this direction and engage in a sincere and constructive negotiation for the full implementation of the Brussels-Ohrid agreements without conditionalities. We also stress the importance of a trilateral, high-level meeting of the dialogue under the chairmanship of the EU High Representative Kallas as a political signal towards advancing the normalization process of bilateral relations, fostering mutual trust and achieving concrete outcomes. We positively note Kosovo's decision to implement the law on foreigners and the law on vehicles in a gradual manner. It is imperative that any steps toward integrating Serbia-supported health and education institutions within the legal framework of Kosovo are carried out in close coordination with the Kosovo Serb community and in full respect of the relevant agreements concluded within the EU-facilitated dialogue. Greece further stresses that the establishment of the association community of Serbs majority municipalities without preconditions remains crucial for the stability of northern Kosovo and constitutes an integral part of the agreements that must be fully implemented. We urge Kosovo authorities to proceed to this end without further delay. We further welcome the results of the recent municipal elections in Kosovo with broad participation of all communities, in particular the transition of authority in the municipalities of northern Kosovo, which signaled the return of Kosovo Serbs to municipal institutions for the first time since 2022. This development represents a significant step toward inclusive governance. The rule of law institutions should be further strengthened. We reiterate the importance of reintegrating Kosovo Serb judges, prosecutors, and police officers into the judiciary and law enforcement structures. At the same time, it is essential that accountability is upheld for those responsible for the 2023 Banjka attacks. Finally, Mr. President, Greece acknowledges the important role of UNMIK in coordination with KFOR and EULEX and supports the continuation of its mandate as necessary in accordance with Security Council Resolution 1244, which provides the legal framework for a final political settlement between Serbia and Kosovo. We remain open to dialogue for exploring ways to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the mission. The future of both Serbia and Kosovo is firmly embedded within the European Union. Since the adoption of the 2003 Thessaloniki Declaration at the EU Western Balkans Summit, Greece has consistently offered its steadfast support to both parties in pursuing their European aspirations. Advancing the European integration of Serbia and Kosovo is vital for upholding stability, security, and prosperity in the region. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, Mr. Peter Due, for his detailed briefing. and for sharing with us his impressions of real progress reached in this region that he knows in depth. We welcome the delegations of Kosovo, Serbia, and the European Union who honor us with their participation today. Panama heralds the peaceful and inclusive nature of recent municipal and legislative elections in Kosovo. We further commend the fact that this electoral contest enjoyed the participation of communities in their full diversity. At the same time, the peaceful handover of power following these elections reflects a cooperative environment underpinning continued peaceful and pluralistic coexistence, even though some weak spots persist in some regions. In addition, we in particular stress the holding of the first meeting of the Joint Commission on Missing Persons in a tripartite format. The holding of this meeting, with the joint presence of all of the parties on a matter as sensitive as the void and pain that the disappearance of persons inflicts on their loved ones, reaffirms the appearance of areas of empathy and mutual understanding. It further represents one of the clearest expressions that there is a real opportunity here to deepen genuine dialogue between the parties. In this regard, we commend the efforts of the European Union Special Representative for the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. At the same time, we underscore the role that continues to be played by the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo and the European Union Rule of Law Mission in Kosovo, EULEX. In parallel, and bearing in mind the importance of guaranteeing accountability and ensuring the accountability, we reiterate the need to bring to justice the perpetrators of the attack in Banska in 2023, as well as the incident on the Iber-Lepenk water canal in 2024, preventing the recurrence of similar events that are counterproductive to the results expected by this Council is necessary to ensure stability in the region. President, Panama reaffirms that only through genuine, sustained and good faith dialogue will it be possible to move towards a lasting normalization between the parties. For this reason, we encourage them to decisively resume the commitments reached under the framework of the European Union facilitated dialogue and to turn them into tangible progress. To conclude, we also reaffirm our support for the benefit brought by UNMIC on the territory as an impartial actor in this process. While it's important for the differences to be respected and borne in mind, it is through this same exercise of mutual understanding that the parties must advance towards agreements that prioritize peace, well-being, and calm for their populations and the entire region. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to welcome the new Special Representative, Mr. Peter Dui, and thank him for his briefing. I also welcome the presence of the ministers of Serbia and Kosovo, as well as the participation of the head of the delegation of the European Union in today's meeting. Mr. President, Latvia commends efforts made by the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, in close coordination with the Kosovo Force Mission, the European Union Rule of Law Mission in Kosovo, and other partners. Latvia has been an active contributor to the Kosovo Force Mission, maintaining its largest military presence in any operation or mission abroad. We will continue to lend our shoulder in strengthening peace and stability on the ground. In this regard, I would like to make following 3 points. First, for the full normalization of relations, it remains of significant importance for both Serbia and Kosovo to continue to engage constructively and in good faith in the EU-facilitated dialogue. Sustainable peace and regional cooperation can be achieved through genuine compromise, mutual respect, and a steadfast commitment to dialogue and reconciliation in the interest of all communities and the region's European perspective. We welcome the agreement reached on the modalities for implementing the law on foreigners, as well as a conducted meeting of the Joint Commission on Missing Persons within the framework of the European Union facilitated dialogue. We thank the EU Special Representative, Mr. Peter Sorensen, for his work in this regard. Secondly, Latvia closely follows the security situation in northern Kosovo and condemns any actions that could lead to destabilization. Serbia and Kosovo should refrain from unilateral rhetoric and activities that may heighten tensions, as it will further strain relations and undermine trust between the communities. We regret that 3 years after the violent attack in Banjska in 2023, justice has yet to be served. We call on Serbia to demonstrate constructive cooperation for full and impartial investigation. Those responsible must be held accountable. Thirdly, Latvia recognizes Kosovo's continued efforts to strengthen democratic institutions, uphold the rule of law, and advance inclusive governance. We encourage to continue the momentum in implementing reforms, particularly in the judiciary, public administration, and in protecting freedom of expression and independent media. Such measures are essential to advancing Kosovo's stability, good governance, European integration. In this regard, a strong institutional stability is crucial. Mr. President, it is important to ensure that mission mandates reflect the reality on the ground. Therefore, Latvia believes there is a need for a strategic review of UNMIK's future engagement. Latvia stands ready to continue its support for Kosovo and the region in their efforts to promote lasting peace, stability, and prosperity for all. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General, Mr. Dewey, for his comprehensive briefing. Somalia warmly welcomes His Excellency Mr. Marko Gjuriqit, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, at today's meeting. Mr. President, Somalia recognizes the important role that UNMIK continues to play in supporting peace, stability, and dialogue in the region. Recent developments in the region merit our careful consideration. We take note of the peaceful conduct of the municipal and legislative elections, which saw the active participation of all communities. Our delegation appreciates the commitment of all parties to constructive engagement and acknowledges the ongoing efforts to address outstanding challenges through peaceful means. Lasting political stability remains essential for creating conditions where social progress and community well-being can thrive. Somalia reaffirms its support for the European Union facilitated dialogue, which remains the principal framework for resolving outstanding issues between Belgrade and Pristina. We call on all parties to refrain from unilateral actions or rhetoric that could undermine trust or escalate tensions. It is vital that all unresolved matters be addressed constructively and in good faith. We welcome the continued progress in the women, peace, and security agenda as evidenced by the significant number of women elected to the Assembly. To conclude, Mr. President, we express our appreciation to the SRSG, DUI, and the entire UMLIC team for their tireless efforts to promote dialogue and build trust on the ground. We further acknowledge the valuable cooperation among UNMIC, the United Nations Kosovo team, and key partners including KFOR and OSCE and the European Union. The continued unified support of this Council for diplomatic engagement remains essential. Lasting stability will require patience, sustainable commitment, and the wisdom to choose diplomatic engagement over unilateral measures. Somalia stands ready to assist all parties in their pursuit of mutually acceptable and peaceful solutions. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I thank Special Representative Peter Dewey for his briefing, and I welcome the participation in today's meeting of the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Kosovo, the Foreign Minister of Serbia, and the head of the EU delegation. President, the United Kingdom remains committed to supporting Kosovo's Euro-Atlantic path and development as an inclusive and multi-ethnic democracy. As one of the first countries to recognise Kosovo's independence, we encourage those member states who have not yet done so to join the majority. As the International Court of Justice made clear in its 2010 advisory opinion, Kosovo's declaration of independence was not a violation of international law. Recognition is essential for long-term stability and for unlocking Kosovo's full potential. We commend the peaceful conduct of municipal and legislative elections last year, including Kosovo Serb participation, and welcome the formation of the government. We encourage swift progress towards the election of a president in line with Kosovo's constitution. The return of Kosovo Serb mayors to Serb majority municipalities in northern Kosovo is another welcome step. We encourage them to focus on practical governance, working constructively with central institutions, and responding to the needs of all their constituents. We continue to call on Kosovo and Serbia to implement existing agreements and resolve outstanding disagreements through the EU-facilitated dialogue. We welcome the establishment of the Joint Commission on Missing Persons and the EU-facilitated agreement on implementation of the law on foreigners as constructive steps towards building trust and supporting stability. More than 2 years on from the Banska attack, we reiterate our call on Serbia to play its part in reducing tensions and bringing those responsible to justice, including Milan Radojcic. We also call for accountability for the attacks against KFOR and Kosovo police personnel in May 2023. Finally, with growing pressure on UN budgets, resources must be directed where they deliver the greatest impact. Conditions on the ground in Kosovo are unrecognisable from 1999. We welcome efforts to improve the balance and focus of UNMIC reporting, and we encourage continued clarity on the mission's core purpose, focusing on drivers of conflict and instability. A strategic review of UNMIC's role, responsibilities and funding is overdue. The proposed 8.6% budget reduction, recommended by the Civilian Staffing Review, must deliver real efficiencies and help ensure UNMIC is agile, efficient and fit for purpose. I would like to end by expressing the United Kingdom's gratitude to the Special Representative, Peter Dewey, and all mission staff who have contributed to UNMIC's work. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of United Kingdom for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me extend a warm welcome to SRSG Peter Due and thank him for his first briefing to the Council. Denmark looks forward to working closely with you. I would also welcome the foreign ministers of Serbia and Kosovo to this meeting, as well as the head of delegation of the European Union to the United Nations. Mr. President, a comprehensive normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo remains essential, not only for the people of both countries, but for the broader regional stability and economic development. The EU-facilitated dialogue remains essential for both parties to advance on their respective European paths, an aspiration that Denmark fully supports. 2026 has begun on an encouraging note for the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. The recent establishment of a joint commission on missing persons represents an important step towards reconciliation and trust building. Likewise, the recent agreement on civil registration and the implementation of the law on foreigners constitutes tangible progress, helping to ensure the uninterrupted provision of essential public services. Denmark warmly welcomes these developments and commends the constructive engagement demonstrated by both sides, as well as the continued efforts by EU Special Representative Peter Sørensen in facilitating these steps. Denmark also welcomes the offer by EU High Representative Kaja Kallas to convene a high-level meeting and urges both parties to engage constructively to ensure that it takes place without delay and yields further progress. It is essential that the parties build on this positive momentum and continue to deliver concrete results. In particular, full implementation of the 2023 Ohrid Agreement remains key. For Kosovo, this includes establishing the Association of Serb Majority Municipalities. For Serbia, it includes refraining from opposing Kosovo's membership of international organizations. The agreements are in place. Now they must be implemented in good faith. We note with concern the continued lack of concrete steps by Serbia to ensure accountability by bringing the perpetrators of the Banjka attacks to justice. This is an issue that continues to negatively affect the normalization process. Mr. President, after a challenging 2025, marked by two general elections in Kosovo, we welcome the establishment of both the Assembly and the government. We hope Kosovo can also overcome its remaining challenges and ensure the prompt formation of all institutions. This is needed to avoid further political deadlock and to focus on the necessary reforms. Denmark commends the smooth transition of power in the northern municipalities following the peaceful and inclusive local elections last year. This was an important first step towards reintegrating Kosovo Serbs into Kosovo's institutional framework. We welcome the increased cooperation in this regard and note the importance of effectively addressing the concerns of non-majority communities in a sustainable and inclusive manner. We note positively that the security situation has remained calm. We urge all parties to avoid any unilateral measures that could jeopardize this. Mr. President, Denmark commends UNMIK's continued and vital role in supporting trust-building and inter-ethnic dialogue, in close cooperation with KFOR, EU-LEX, and other international partners. This work is particularly important for young people in Kosovo, who represent a significant share of the population. At the same time, the Council has a responsibility to ensure that mandates remains fit for purpose. Given that UNMIK's mandates dates back to 1999, Denmark stands ready to engage in discussions on a possible strategic review of the mission. Mr. President, let me conclude by reaffirming Denmark's continued support for a peaceful, democratic, multi-ethnic Kosovo and its European aspirations, as well as full integration into the international community. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. Floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General Peter Dewey for his briefing on the situation in the province and for sharing his views. We welcome the participation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, Marko Gjuriqit. We have listened to the views expressed by Mr. Glauk Konjufca. The situation in Kosovo continues to deteriorate steadily. The ultranationalist regime of so-called Prime Minister Albin Kurti is accelerating a purge of the non-Albanian population in the northern part of the province. The methods remain the same as before: economic strangulation, expanding the network of police stations in northern municipalities, violence carried out by Kosovo security forces, and intimidation campaigns against civilians, as well as the criminal prosecution of Serbs on fabricated charges with a view to seizing their property. Another vivid example of Kosovo-Albanian nationalism is the so-called law on foreigners, as well as the law on vehicles. In essence, Serbs have been presented with a harsh choice: either accept this so-called citizenship of Kosovo or leave. Pristina's purely symbolic concession regarding the continued functioning of Serbian medical and educational institutions, which took the form of postponing the enforcement of these discriminatory so-called laws, is by no means an achievement of the EU, as Special Representative Mr. Sorensen would have it, but rather an attempt to cover up complicity in the gradual takeover of structures that ensure the survival of the Serbian population in the province. As for the establishment of the association or community of Serb-majority municipalities in Kosovo provided for in the 2013 Brussels Agreement, Pristina, with the connivance of Brussels, continues to sabotage its creation. A sacrilegious assault on Serbian cultural and religious heritage is ongoing. Orthodox cemeteries, monasteries, and churches are being desecrated and looted. Since 1999, more than 60 such sites have suffered at the hands of vandals. Almost half of them were completely destroyed. Since the year 2000, 400 Orthodox cemeteries have been desecrated, 50 have been destroyed, and more than 100,000 gravestones have been smashed. In an attempt to erase the Serbian presence, Kosovo-Albanian pseudo-scholars are falsifying the history of the province, but they cannot erase the historical fact that it is Kosovo which is the cradle of Serbian national identity and of the Serbian Orthodox Church. In addition, the fundamental rights of Serbian political representatives are being violated. Suffice it to mention the scheming of the Kosovo so-called Central Election Commission against the Serbian List Party during the so-called parliamentary elections. In addition to the lawlessness just described, Pristina is exploring opportunities to deploy the Kosovo Security Force in the north of the province. The recorded appearance there, allegedly by mistake, of a military column of the KSF in October 2025 was yet another demonstrative attempt by the local authorities to rid themselves of the obligation to coordinate their actions with the command of the NATO-led Kosovo force. There has been an increase in attacks by anonymous masked Kosovo Albanians on Serbian police patrols in the ground safety zone along the administrative boundary line with central Serbia. In this context, media reports that Mr. Kurti has been attempting to persuade Western partners to support his idea of withdrawing NATO's Kosovo force from this buffer zone are particularly alarming. These forces remain the only legitimate military formation in the province, as stipulated by the Kumanovo Agreement and Security Council Resolution 1244. We are convinced that replacing the international presence with Pristina's military forces could bring about a serious deterioration of the security situation. This must not be allowed. It should also be recalled that the Kosovo Albanians responsible for the beating on May 28, 2019 of Mikhail Krasnoshokov, an employee of the UN mission in Kosovo, have still not been held accountable. Furthermore, on December 31, 2021, in violation of the established international legal norms, Pristina declared a staff member of the UN mission, Andrei Antonov, persona non grata. At the same time, Kurti's team is systematically glorifying war criminals, the former leaders of the so-called Kosovo Liberation Army. Rallies are held, and the Pristina parliament adopts resolutions in their support. Thematic events with KALA symbols are even being organized in kindergartens. The EU invariably turns a blind eye to this, despite the fact that the aforementioned Kosovo military leaders are currently on trial in The Hague for war crimes and crimes against humanity before a special court established with the EU playing a leading role. Moreover, Western capitals continue to indulge Pristina in coercing Serbian authorities to resolve the Kosovo issue purely on Pristina's terms. They're helping strengthen the province's so-called state sovereignty, to create and arm its own so-called army, which the Kosovo Albanians are prohibited from having pursuant to Security Council Resolution 1244. NATO member states are also playing their part. There is a plan to launch the production of ammunition in the province by the end of this year in cooperation with some NATO member states. Cooperation within the openly anti-Serb military alliance of Zagreb, Tirana, Pristina is gaining momentum. This accelerated militarization of Kosovo creates a serious threat of escalation in the Balkans. Against this backdrop, the optimistic assessments in the Secretary General's report regarding the EU's mediating role in the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue are indeed perplexing. It is obvious that the Brussels negotiation format, just like the EU as a mediator, has utterly discredited itself and has long had nothing to do with normalization. Such blatant duplicity on the part of Western so-called mediators deserves to be recognized as such by the Security Council. Given the uninterrupted chain of violations of UN Security Council Resolution 1244 by Kosovo's so-called authorities and their accommodating Western partners, it is becoming ever more necessary to undertake a comprehensive analysis of this document, a document that remains the cornerstone of the stability architecture in the Balkans. A clear signal is needed from the Security Council, a signal that the international community will not stand for violations of Resolution 1244, pursuant to which the autonomous province of Kosovo and Metohija is an integral part of the Republic of Serbia. For our part, we will continue to assist Belgrade in defending its legitimate rights and interests with regard to Kosovo and Metohija, and in protecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country. We will only accept a solution that is acceptable to the Serbs themselves. Mr. President, in these challenging circumstances, it is unacceptable to reduce the frequency or to change the format of Security Council meetings on Kosovo, nor is it acceptable to reduce the budgetary and staffing ceiling of UNMIC, which continues to perform the essential task of contributing to the maintenance of stability in the province. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank SRSG Peter Due presidential election, hopefully within the period recently granted by the Constitutional Court. We recognize the complex and intricate web of challenges that this region has and continues to confront. This further reinforces our conviction that only a sustained and meaningful dialogue process, toning down of political rhetoric, and full implementation of commitments made under the 2013 and 2023 agreement in their entirety and unconditionally can help overcome these challenges and lead to lasting peace and stability in the region. My delegation deeply appreciates the European Union's steadfast commitment and efforts to facilitate dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina. We are heartened to note the convening of the Joint Commission on Missing Persons in a trilateral format and the agreement on law of foreigners. We hope that both sides will continue to build on the positive momentum, refrain from unilateral actions that stoke tensions, and continue constructive cooperation to resolve all outstanding issues. Mr. President, divisive rhetoric, hate speech, and intercommunal tensions have long plagued this region with horrid consequences in the past. These trends should not be allowed to take root and disturb peace and tranquility. We are perturbed by the reports of desecration of religious sites. We unequivocally condemn all such actions directed against any religion or its people and hope that relevant authorities would take decisive action to prevent such incidents from happening in the future. In this context, we note with appreciation UNMIC's efforts to promote harmony and foster the spirit of coexistence and tolerance amongst various communities in Kosovo. Trust building between the two sides remains essential for moving forward. Tangible progress to bring perpetrators of the Iber Lipens and Banska attack to justice will go a long way in this regard, and we hope that relevant authorities from both sides would cooperate earnestly towards this end. Pakistan enjoys friendly relations with Serbia and with Kosovo and remains a resolute supporter of a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Balkans. What the region urgently needs is meaningful engagement, a firm commitment for the principles of mutual respect, recognition of mutual sensitivities, safeguarding social and economic rights of all peoples, and promotion of the spirit of peaceful coexistence and intercommunal harmony. The Balkans have suffered enough from the failures of the past. The future surely must be different. We therefore call upon parties to choose the path of principle over prejudice and patience over provocation to ensure lasting peace and stability in the region. I thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin by expressing my thanks to the Special Representative of the Secretary-General and Head of UNMIC, Mr. Peter Dewey. I thank him for his briefing and just as he begins his appointment. UNMIC enshrines in Pristina the values of the Charter. It particularly enshrines the respect of the rights of peoples to provide for themselves and also respect for human rights, particularly the right of persons and minorities to have their fundamental rights fully recognized at the same time as they build their future in the international community. I also welcome here the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, Mr. Marko Gjuriqit, and of Kosovo, Mr. Glauk Konjufca. Mr. President, I wish to begin by referring to what Serbia and Kosovo have in common, that is their European future, a future of peace and progress on the horizon. The path towards the integration of both countries into the European Union is complex, but is something that is done for the benefit of their populations. The issue here is for building nation-states that overcome the founding wounds and that would consolidate pluralistic democracies. For the European Union, the conclusion of the progress process that started following the end of the former Yugoslavia is particularly important to bring an end to any confrontation. France, therefore, calls on both countries to continue along the path towards normalization in their relations, supported by the EU-facilitated dialogue, which is demonstrating both its relevance and effectiveness. In this regard, France fully supports the current positive momentum in the relations between Kosovo and Serbia, spearheaded by the mediation of the Special Representative of the European Union, Mr. Peter Sorensen, with the support of the close partners of both countries and the UN. The agreement reached on the 14th of March on the gradual implementation of the law on foreigners following European mediation and the constructive approach of all parties represents a step in the right direction. With our partners, we will remain watchful to ensure its good full implementation, which must be ensured in close cooperation with the Special Representative of the EU and involving representatives of the Kosovo Serb community. Mr. President, Important steps still need to be taken here. The Brussels-Ohrid agreement set the course. It now falls to both countries to implement them with the same spirit of dialogue. The Security Council must encourage UNMIC to play its full role in the observation and pursuit of this dialogue. I take this opportunity to applaud the smooth conduct of local elections in Kosovo in October and November last year. They were marked by the involvement of all communities and by a peaceful handover of power in the municipalities of northern Kosovo. Restoring Serbs' active participation in local governance and more generally in Kosovo's institutions remains essential. I also commend the orderly holding of legislative elections in December last year and the constitution of the Assembly through the election of a president and vice presidents representing non-majority communities in accordance with the Constitution. Furthermore, more than 2.5 years on, it is unacceptable for the perpetrators of the Banska attack to remain at large. Those responsible for these attacks must be brought to justice and be held to account. Mr. President, France continues to support UNMIC's efforts in coordination with KFOR and the EULEX Kosovo mission. UNMIC's mandate is intrinsically linked to the normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo. France supports all common-sense efforts aimed to improve and streamline peacekeeping missions through efficiency measures in full respect for their mandate. France assures the new SRSG of our full confidence and support in his work for a lasting peace through reconciliation between both countries. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General and join in welcoming the distinguished foreign ministers of Kosovo and Serbia into the chambers. We also welcome in a special way the head of delegation of the European Union to the United Nations. We want to acknowledge the continued engagement of all regional and international actors in support of stability in Kosovo. Mr. President, the picture before us is neither one of crisis nor of calm. It is one of a delicate equilibrium, maintained by restraint, tested by mistrust, and shaped by decisions with consequences beyond the immediate. Liberia has learned that institutions cannot run on hope alone. They do require sustained political commitment and leadership that places national interests above narrow political calculus. Today, Kosovo stands at a critical junction where political uncertainty, fragile security conditions, and unresolved legacies intersect. Encouraging steps, including the formation of a government and ongoing technical engagement, coexist with institutional fragility, recurring tensions in the North, and a dialogue process that too often struggles to translate meetings into momentum. In this environment, progress is measured not only by breakthroughs, but by the ability to avoid setbacks. Undoubtedly an achievement, but also, and certainly, a warning. Liberia would like to highlight a few points in that regard. First, on the political process, recent elections underscore both the resilience and vulnerability of Kosovo's democratic institutions. Prolonged political deadlock, however, reflects deeper structural strains. Democratic processes must be not only credible, but decisive. Legitimacy flows not just from the ballot, but from institutions that can act, deliver, and unify. Second, on the dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, Liberia strongly supports the EU-facilitated process and encourages renewed efforts to ensure that dialogue delivers concrete outcomes. Agreements already reached, particularly on missing persons, carry profound human significance and should be implemented without delay. For families awaiting answers, progress must be tangible. Third, on security, while the overall environment remains stable, it is sensitive to localized tensions. Isolated incidents, inflammatory rhetoric, and competing narratives risk eroding trust. UNMIC, K4, and EU lex remain important stabilizing anchors, and their coordination is essential. At the same time, lasting peace requires inclusive institutions that command the trust of all communities. Fourth, on the rule of law, findings from EU lex continue to point to delays and pressures within the justice system. These are foundational challenges. Justice that is delayed or perceived as uneven undermines public confidence and stability. Liberia's own experience shows that rebuilding trust requires consistency, independence, and visible accountability. Fifth, on socioeconomic and humanitarian dimensions, unemployment, inequality, and disparities affecting minority communities persist. Development cannot flourish where communities feel excluded. Economic inclusion must accompany political inclusion. The unresolved legacy of missing persons, displacement, and the protection of cultural and religious heritage remains central to sustainable peace. Finally, on UNMIC's future, Liberia recognizes differing views within this council. This need not be a binary choice. The focus should be on how the mission can continue to adapt in support of stability, dialogue, and institution building, grounded in realities on the ground and inclusive of all communities perspectives. Mr. President, Liberia encourages this Council to prioritize problem solving over positioning. The future of Kosovo will be shaped not by a single movement, but by sustained commitment to dialogue, inclusion, and restraint. In this effort, responsibility lies first with the parties and also with this Council to remain balanced, engaged, and forward-looking. With that, I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the representative of Liberia for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Bahrain.
At the outset, I would like to thank His Excellency Mr. Peter Dewey, Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of UNMIK. We appreciate his efforts in promoting dialogue and building confidence. I also welcome the representative of Serbia and the representative of Kosovo and the head of the EU delegation to today's meeting. The Kingdom of Bahrain values all constructive initiatives aimed at strengthening good neighborly relations, including among countries in the Western Balkans. The Kingdom of Bahrain also welcomes the formation of the Government of Kosovo in February 2026. We believe that sustainable political stability is essential to create an enabling environment to preserve security and stability and to advance development and prosperity efforts. In this context, I would like to refer to 3 points. First, the Kingdom of Bahrain calls upon both Serbia and Kosovo to engage constructively and in a spirit of good faith in the EU-facilitated Pristina-Belgrade dialogue and to implement the existing agreements with the aim of establishing and developing relations between the two neighboring countries. We also welcome the proposal to hold a trilateral meeting between Serbian and Kosovar leaders and the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. The Kingdom of Bahrain deems important to prioritize the language of dialogue and diplomacy and to make use of available opportunities, including those facilitated by the European Union. Second, on the humanitarian level, according to the report of the Secretary General, 1,582 persons remain missing in the aftermath of the events of 1998-1999 in Kosovo. In this regard, the Kingdom of Bahrain commends the existing cooperation between the Kosovar and Serbian authorities in searching for evidence to determine their fate. We also welcome the holding of a meeting of the Joint Commission on Missing Persons for the first time in a trilateral format facilitated by the European Union. Constructive cooperation between the two countries paves the way toward joint work in the future. Third, the Kingdom of Bahrain affirms the importance of strengthening trust, consolidating the values of tolerance and coexistence among peoples and cultures, out of our belief in the significance of these values in achieving stability and prosperity. In this context, the Kingdom of Bahrain expresses its regret over what was mentioned in the SG's report regarding the occurrence of several incidents targeting sites belonging to the Serbian Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church, in addition to Islamic sites. We stress the importance of coexistence among all groups and components of society, and working towards inclusiveness within Kosovo's multi-ethnic society. In conclusion, the Kingdom of Bahrain reiterates the importance of enhancing relations between Kosovo and Serbia and developing cooperation between them, and the necessity of reaching mutual understandings and agreements to preserve security and stability in the Western Balkans region.
As a President of the Council, I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lampernis, Head of the Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states. The candidate countries North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, the Republic of Moldova, as well as Norway and San Marino align themselves with this statement. I wish to congratulate SRG Dua on the assumption of his important role and to thank him for his briefing today as well as for the report. President, the European Union remains fully and unequivocally committed to the EU membership perspective of the Western Balkans. The EU welcomes that Serbia and Kosovo remain engaged in the EU-facilitated dialogue led by the High Representative, Kaja Kallas, and supported by EU Special Representative Peter Sorensen. The agreement reached on 14 March on civil registration and the law on foreigners marks an important way forward. The EU welcomes the overall commitment by Kosovo to the rule of law. Any process affecting health and education institutions should be inclusive and coordinated with representatives of the Kosovo Serb community within the framework of all relevant agreements reached within the EU-facilitated dialogue and Kosovo law. President, progress on normalization of the relations is among the essential conditions for the European path of both Kosovo and Serbia. This includes the full implementation of the 2023 agreement on the path to normalization and of all previous agreements reached in the EU-facilitated dialogue. The European Union commends the parties for the progress achieved on the important humanitarian issue of missing persons by holding the first trilateral meeting of the Joint Commission on Missing Persons under the dialogue. Looking ahead, the EU expects both Kosovo and Serbia to constructively participate in a high-level meeting of the dialogue chaired by the High Representative Kallas once convened. We call on Kosovo to finalize formation of all institutions to allow for a renewed focus on the much-needed EU-related reforms. The European Union welcomes the smooth handover of local governance in the 4 northern municipalities of Kosovo and the cooperation between security actors, including with EULEX, the European Union Rule of Law Mission in Kosovo. The EU welcomes the good cooperation with UNMIK. We also welcome the resumption of cooperation between municipal and central authorities that reflects the expectations of Kosovo Serbs, previous agreements, and Kosovo law. We reiterate the importance of and our support for the work of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers.
In this context, we once again call on Serbian authorities to respond to Kosovo's requests for judicial cooperation and encourage the return of judges, prosecutors, and police officers. We also call on Kosovo's authorities to implement their reintegration. The European Union, finally, regrets that Serbia has still not taken the necessary steps to bring to justice the perpetrators of the attacks in the north of Kosovo in 2023.
Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Lamperdinis for the statement. His Excellency Mr. Marko Gjuriqit, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give him the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Esteemed colleagues, I want to thank you for your patience, for listening out to what we had to say. I believe that today's session, regardless of the fact that discussion was at times difficult and opposing views were expressed, has a stabilizing effect, as it provides an important institutional mechanism for expressing our views. Having said this, I will make very brief comments on what was said by Mr. Konjufca regarding alleged Serbian interference into the electoral process. We encouraged all people in Kosovo to participate in elections. We encourage and support the peaceful transition of municipal structures in the north of Kosovo. However, we are not satisfied with the fact that Serbs were not included into the government in line with the constitution, which explicitly stipulates in Article 95.3 that the party which wins the majority of the votes from the Serbian community should be respected and included in the government. Something different happened. The head of Serb list, Mr. Zlatan Elek, was in fact subject to police and judicial harassment. When a reference was made for Serbian illegal structures in the sphere of education and healthcare, to explain this a bit, basically what was meant that the only Serbian language university in the north of Kosovo is treated as an illegal parallel structure, a university with whose diploma you can work in every European country, in every capital of the world, unfortunately is not being recognized by the authorities there. But I don't want to speak anymore about our differences. I want to say that despite our differences, Serbia is determined to try and isolate our disagreements, to work constructively within the framework of the EU-facilitated dialogue. Although we do not agree on the status and our numbers regarding which countries recognize and do not recognize the independence, unilaterally declared so-called independence of Kosovo, are different. According to our numbers, 86 UN members have recognized and 107 do not recognize at the moment, because 28 countries have in the meantime, in the past 10 years, revoked recognition. But this is besides the point. We do not want to compete, and we do not want to waste our political, economic, and diplomatic resources on lobbying against each other. I believe we should lobby for turning our region into a region of success, isolating our differences, and despite our differences, I welcome the respectful tone of today's discussion. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Dodic for his statement. Mr. Glauk Konjufca has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give him the floor.
Mr. President, just me allow to address some clarifications on what has been said, especially by Mr. Gjuriqit. According to the law on foreigners, I wanted just to clarify that the actions of the government of Kosovo are fully in accordance with the fundamental responsibilities of a foreign sovereign state to oversee its resident population and aligned with European standards on national security, legal migration, and work permit laws. We cannot have double standards. Kosovo is an independent and sovereign state and has a responsibility to its citizens, as well as to the EU and other bodies where it is a member or aspires to join. It must demonstrate authority over its territory and clearly distinguish between residents and foreigners. And this is fundamental. Everybody does this. No UN member country, including those in the Security Council, permits undocumented foreigners to remain. Unlike the Serbian authorities, systematic weaponization of the law on permanent and temporary residence of citizens of the year 2011 to strip ethnic Albanians in the Preševo Valley of their registered addresses, voting rights, and ultimately their legal identity, our law on foreigners is meant to improve, integrate, and standardize public services in Kosovo. Serbs working in health, or educational institutions that are not managed by Kosovo institutions and who possess documents from Serbian structures are required to apply for a 12 months residency permit. Kosovo's law on foreigners is neither discriminatory nor preferential towards any community. It is a law with European standards. However, we cannot allow parallelism, as this contradicts the rule of law and the uniform constitutional order. The law on foreigners represents an obligation that Kosovo took under the Stabilization and Association Agreement with EU. And I refer here specifically to Article 86 on legal migration, which requires Kosovo to align its legislation with EU law. Regarding integration of the Serb health and educational sector in Kosovo, let me conclude that we are not closing the healthcare and education institutions of the Serb minority. Rather, we are ensuring they operate within our legal and institutional framework to prevent parallelism and discord. This effort aims to integrate the Serb community and promote peace building by establishing a shared legal framework for public services. The existence of illegal Serbian institutions has never been about the welfare of the local community. Instead, it serves as a strategic tool for Serbia to keep Kosovo dysfunctional, divided, and vulnerable to failure. This is the fundamental aim, I think, of Serbia. And it is important to recall also one report of UNMIC of year 2007, which says about the structures of Serbia, and I'm citing that these structures contravene UNMIC's authority to implement its mandate, thereby violating even the Resolution 1244 and establishing precondition for a de facto partition of Kosovo. Through these measures, we seek to ensure that Kosovo remains a unified and functional state. The end of parallelism marked the birth of integration and a genuine process of peace building and reconciliation. And as far as ethnically motivated incidents that were mentioned here, regretfully, the UNMIC report is not a reliable indicator of safety and security in Kosovo. Let me allow you to just have the information about the recent Gallup Law and Order Index. This is a global report in which Kosovo is among the top-ranked, most secure places, among the most secure places in the world. UNMIC's report exaggerates these incidents, I think, which are not necessarily ethnically motivated, but they are nonetheless dealt with by our police. They are mainly common theft cases and are not planned or targeted against any community in Kosovo. Serbia intentionally misrepresents these incidents to frame Kosovo negatively and attempt to score points here in this council, which is a very irresponsible and malicious act. Our EU and OSCE very well-trained police and professional forces has excellent capacity to handle ethnically motivated cases. Serbia, on the other hand, has been using its police forces to brutally attack students and opposition who demand political changes against the authoritarian rule in this country. While concerning these alleged arrests of Serb for war crimes, this is a well-known strategy of Serbia to portray war crimes as cases with political motivation, an aim against the Serb community. I'll tell you this is not true. Unlike Serbia, which has ceased to prosecute war crimes in its jurisdiction, Kosovo is committed to transitional justice and dealing with the past. Our judicial institutions have a comprehensive victim-centered strategy and plan for prosecuting war crimes regardless of ethnicity. They operate in accordance with the law and the highest international criminal justice standards. We have hundreds and hundreds of war crime cases and crimes against humanity, including sexual violence cases committed by the Serbian army, police, and paramilitary forces during the years 1998-1999 against Kosovo Albanians who were not addressed either by United Nations, EU, and other courts in Kosovo. We have a duty to bring justice to the victims, and we will not stop until all cases are resolved. I thank you.
I thank Mr. Konjufca for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.